So in true yogic tradition, I will begin with invoking the divine Ganesha for an auspicious start and the removal of all blocks and obstacles that may come in the way for a smooth learning and transmission of this next hour or so. Om Shri Maha Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Invoking my gurus and guides with their blessings. Om Ma, Om Shri Ma. Invoking the Divine Mother as the psychic being and the spiritual being within us. Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. Invoking the source, the Divine Mother of the Satchidananda consciousness. Om Tat Savitur Varam Rupam Jyotihi Parasya Dhimahi Yanna Satyena Deepayet. Invoking the Parasya Jyoti, the Supreme Light, to come in and diffuse into each of us and to take over this entire process that is to unfold. May the highest possible outcome happen for the highest good of all. So I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to read the link that was shared on this post of the event. But my background with the integral yoga is that I was, of course, deeply fortunate that well before I was born, sometimes in the 1950s, my father was a naval officer and the ship had come to Pondicherry and they had to call on the ashram and pay their respects to the mother. And so the mother said, me someone who can play tennis with me. And my father happened to be a tennis player. So he had the incredible blessing and grace to actually meet the mother in the ashram tennis grounds next to the sea and play tennis with her. So I didn't know much about any of this, but years later, when I came to the study of yoga and Vedanta in the Shivananda tradition, I qualified as the Shivananda yoga teacher. This is Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, the Divine Life Society. And then through one of his teachers, I came to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo and remembered that there was this connection. By this time, my husband had got colon cancer at the age of 40, and we had just moved from London to Hong Kong. And we started this deep dive into finding a way to heal the cancer. And we created an integrative medicine program, and I really deeply dived into the study of integral health and everything the Mother and Sri Aurobindo had written about healing. And that's where I came across the book, The Mind of the Cells by Sat Prem. Because I kept thinking cancer is a disease of the cells. And Mother, towards the end of her physical incarnation, this incarnation, she had started doing the yoga of the cells. And she had this tremendous discovery that the cells themselves are conscious beings. They're like little persons. And that she could enter into conversation with them. She could actually teach them and train them. And she would describe how the cells themselves wish to do yoga. The cells themselves wish to enter into union with the divine, with that Ananda consciousness. And then she discovered that what was stopping this pure, pristine cell, which had the incredible plasticity by itself to actually attain the state of yoga, was what I think she called the mechanical mind, which is like a program, the way I understand it. It's like a memory pattern, like a cage that surrounded every little cell. And that memory pattern is basically repeating ad nauseum that anything that is born must grow and then must die. Decay is inevitable. Death is inevitable. This is just memory that cells had acquired over the evolution on this planet. And she describes that it's almost as if decay and death is a bad habit that cells have acquired, and we need to help the cells release and let go this programming. And she said, but such is the incredible plasticity of the cell that every little vibration, every little thought, every little suggestion, it just takes and absorbs. And it's like a record, in the old days, the lac records, and once you put a groove on it, then it just plays that same groove again and again. So she would talk about days and months of trying to eradicate and erase this programming around the cells. She says the real key is to dissolve this mechanical mind that surrounds the cell and that keeps the cell contained in an old falsehood, because death is a falsehood. And then she would talk about this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate. And that is a mantra that she would get her cells to chant with her. And she would say, when she began that japa, it's almost as if there was this incredible symphony, like this entire cellular, collective would rise in harmony with her and chant that, because such was their deep learning for yoga, for divinization, for evolving into their own full potential. And I started understanding the path to helping cells heal and transform. I started thinking of how can we connect all that the mother experienced and shared in her yoga of the cells. How can we connect to the healing of cancer? Because cancer is essentially a disease of a cell. It is a cell that has forgotten to die. And it just is it's a disease of greed of the cells, because they just want to consume everything they have around. They suck away all the nutrition of the body of the host, and they keep multiplying themselves. And there is a kind of stupidity in the logic of the cancerous cell, because eventually it eats up its host, and therefore the host dies. And when the host dies, the cancer dies too. So in a way, the quest for immortality, which is what cancerous cell seems to be expressing, almost like a Trishanku. We have the of Trishanku in our tradition, where he wants to move to heaven with his physical body. And the gods keep telling him, you can't do that, because to get into the high realms, you need a pure body, a new body, a different kind of body, a different kind of material for that body. And you can't take this body made with the Panchatattva into that realm of consciousness. And of course, there's the rest of the story, which I'll not go into. But it's as if the cancer cell in the human body has lost its way. It's trying to achieve its own immortality, but in the process, doing it at the expense of the host body, and eventually dying before time itself by killing the host before the host may have natural death. And so I was looking to understand, what if nothing is an accident? As Mother would say, if you think of everything as if it has come from the divine, then indeed it becomes. So what if, just like it took about 13, mutations before nature could create the eye? So we would only, what Shraddhalu Ranadesh so beautifully says, if nature is forever prototyping its next evolutionary version, then what if these cancer cells, which is some cells of the body seeking immortality, which is actually the future of the itself. As we know in the integral yoga, the quest is for a life in a divine body. Cancer seems to be doing at its little limited level, at a limited cellular level. What if it is an attempt of nature, but as yet has lost its mark? And if it can be made conscious, that same impulse from nature, what if that impulse is made conscious back into alignment with where the divine will and the evolution itself wishes to go, at the pace at which the collective itself can? If we get these lost cancerous cells and bind them to return to an alignment with where the resolution is going, and with all these new forces available for the transmutation of the body, the psychicization of the Aadhar, the spiritualization of the Aadhar, and the supramentalization of the Aadhar, which is the whole path of the integral yoga. So I used to do a lot of yoga, and little by little, what came to me was a cellular healing meditation that I started teaching our cancer patients helping. And this is available on the Shakti Leadership website. I can share the link here again. It was a combination of the mother's mantra of the cells, Om Namo Bhagavate, and that there is a yantra, which is these golden ratio spirals, 6 clockwise and 6 anti-clockwise. And how do we work with them inside every cell as we are hunting? And we intend that this yantra, almost like a Sudarshan, just starts spinning inside every cell and gathering all that DNA and all the cellular material. And the golden ratio is the ratio of symmetry of creation. So the ratio of health. So by inserting this golden ratio yantra into every cell and seeing it spin and connect with the power of the mantra, the yantra and the mantra together with deep sincerity on part of the meditator, on part of the sadhak, asking that whatever is every cell that is misaligned, may it returned to the geometry of creation, which is the golden ratio, what's called phi. It's you'll recognize it when you see it. And the visualization that as you do, your vibrations connect with the divine, the mother, and you invoke that force in every cell, and the cells themselves start spinning, coming like spirals, and start emitting light. Because when you see the picture of mantra, there are very natural 12 rays of light emitting from the center. So that's the visualization, that let each cell in its of the divine, the Jyoti within, let each cell merge that divine force and become like a tiny golden sun that's spinning and radiating 12 rays of light in all directions until this whole body becomes like itself, giving out light and connecting with all these divine energies and returning to harmony and alignment from a cellular level all the way to the whole body. So this in a nutshell was the cellular healing meditation that I started teaching cancer patients. And then I was very surprised that some of them would come to say mysteriously their tumors had gone. And of course, they were doing many other things. We can't attribute only to this meditation, but it was an interesting fact that happened along the way. Say salvation is physical, and that is why when we're looking at a time of mission, a time to get released from this falsehood of the salvation we're all seeking and yearning on this planet. Her discovery that enlightened mind, or even a harmonized vital or a divinized vital is not going to be enough, that we are going to eventually have to achieve the physical transformation at a cellular level. And only when the consciousness of the cells is transformed into a divine consciousness, and alongside the material of the cell, the physical matter of the cell is transformed into a more plastic material that is able to flow with the divine will. Only then is the human experience on this planet going to be transformed. Only then are we going free. So today it's Buddha Purnima. It's the day of Earth and the enlightenment and the passing of the Buddha. And this incredible realization that thanks to his life and teachings, the world now understands the word enlightenment. So it's a beautiful day for us today to begin from enlightenment, because the other enlightenment, which is like a summary of the integral yoga, is after enlightened transformation. So we can't get to transformation without having achieved the enlightened mind and senses and emotions, which is what the Buddha so beautifully taught and left behind such wonderful practices and for people to achieve the Buddha Chitta. So on this day to talk about virus, here we are on the 7th of May, 2020, on a Buddha Purnima, with all the knowledge we have of the integral yoga and the Buddha's teaching. And we are stuck in a caused by a tiny little virus. So let's understand what is the deep meaning of a tiny little virus that has somehow brought the world to a standstill and almost, you could say, to its knees. I would like to step back from looking at the virus as just a disease-causing agent, and again make the correlation like there was between cancer, a cell's quest for immortality, and the integral yoga, which was a divine life in a divine body. And in the same way, on one hand, we are having this COVID virus, which is going around potently, powerfully infecting and killing people around the world. And on the other hand, we also have this thing called Contagion that the mother used so often when she was in search of that method through which the entire human species could evolve, right? She was doing the yoga of her cells so that her cells could learn to transmit all the transformations they have achieved, to transmit that to other cells across the human species. So she was in search of a contagion. That's the word she would use. It's like positive contagion, that if her body and the trillions of cells in her body can in some way also part contagion and in a way infect of other bodies to become like the cells, the supramentalized formed, the divinized cells of her body. She sees how the transformation process of the species will go much faster. She's in search of a contagion. And I know Sri Aurobindo and Mother have, if the quest for a divine life in a divine body had to happen just our own individual bodies, would have done it long ago. But that's not the purpose of this incarnation. We have come to achieve the transformation of the physical matter, physical body, at a species level, for all humanity. So it's interesting that even after they left their bodies, of course, they have said, we will not leave until the entire terrestrial transformation is achieved. And they are here, and they are their power, their force, their grip continues in us that we may or may not be in touch with. And so we would have to think about and have faith in the fact, even though Sri Aurobindo left his body in 1950 and the mother in 1973, that work continues. And so come to 2020. But before I come to this virus of 2020, please, I ask if I say some things here are not the truth and their will. But over the years, as I've meditated on Mother's yoga of the cells and tried to understand why did she leave the body, what was she attempting to do yogically, like when she describes she was passing, she says, don't call it a death. His was not a death in the way ordinary leaves a body. He went deeper, inconscient, to divinize that a sufficient foundation and adhar can be achieved for our physical body to achieve divinity. So in the same way, when I have considered and meditated on why did Mother, after so many years of yoga the cells and describing the fact that victory is achieved, why did she leave the body? And one insight or idea that has consistently bubbled up for me is, what if she had managed to supramentalize all her cells? Every cell was now like an imaginal cell of a butterfly. And today, many people are describing this metaphor that, like a caterpillar has to go into a cocoon stage and completely mulch and become, and then its imaginal cells get activated, and then they feed each other and they become imaginal discs. And then the immune system of the caterpillar cocoon can no longer fight these cells as foreign, and so it gives up. Then these collected imaginal discs able to fashion the body of the body with the material that's in the cocoon from the old body of the caterpillar. So imaginal cells are required, which are like stem cells of the new body, the blueprint of the new to come. So what if Mother had trained her cells to become the imaginal cells of the new human that could have a divine life in a divine body, because it had contained by now and established in itself the supramental force? And perhaps she found the fastest way to now spread this is not by having people come to me, but if she could decentralize herself, let her cells go almost like pollen grain, like into the world, and go and meet as many and adhars that were receptive enough of receiving it, so that her cell, much like a virus does, a virus is not really a living thing. It's of being a living and non-living unit of nature, and its real job is to simply transfer genetic information from here to there. And actually, if you study biology, cellular biology, understand that all evolution from the plant kingdom to the animal kingdom to the human kingdom, evolution has taken place through mutations. And mutations are created by these bacteria that come into the host cell, enter into the nucleus of the host cell, merge with it, and effectively mutate it. So that from on, when that cell multiplies, it is now creating a different cell and eventually a different organism. And that, if it is a positive mutation, you new species. But if it is a negative mutation, it's called a failed mutation, and then nature neutralizes that and takes it out. So what if this is a master stroke from the mother? And please forgive me, Mother Sri Aurobindo, if I'm misleading in any way. But this is, we often say life is meaning. If you tell a high quality story, you'll have a high experience. But if you tell a poor quality story, you'll have a poor quality experience. So this myth I'm creating, this positive story I'm creating for us to consider, what if mother has already of putting her consciousness force and her genetic material of the new species, and she's already that into people of the world, and then that in turn gets transferred from parent to child and so on. And if already the idea of a supramentalized divine life in a divine body already is a potential in the population, what it then needs is some kind of a trigger event. It needs something that will activate the power that is sitting inside. So this virus in 2020, the fact that we had the super anniversary this year on the 29th of Feb, and the most spread has happened since February, March, April, and so on, like right mother's birthday and the super anniversary. Know whether the original virus, and there's a lot of information saying it was man-made, it is meant to be a biological weapon, whatever that is. But what if this higher force, this grace of the mother, Sri Aurobindo, because nature has said she will collaborate in the coming transformation, what if the grace has taken this triggering event of the virus, worked with it to form the negative effect of this contagion and transmuted it, transformed, changed it into a positive contagion that can now spread much faster. So then the question comes, how we take in virus, if we're going to be exposed to it. We're trying so hard not to be exposed to virus. We're trying so hard to be isolated and so on. But if we do it, instead of fearing that this is an infection that can be, what if those of us who understand the integral yoga, who know how to access and connect with the mother and ask for her transforming force, work with the mantras Mother Sri Aurobindo left behind for us to work with? What if we could do that and use what could effectively be a disease-causing infection and transmit through our inner sadhana in a path that can actually create a new kind of immunity for ourselves, and slowly but surely also start transforming ourselves and our bodies into this new body that we all eventually have to live into. So this is like a unusual idea, but it's something I like to work with because I fall sick. I did fall sick just before the last full moon, on the day of the full moon, 8th of April, and I was sick for 7 days, and I didn't know whether I had COVID-19 symptoms. I didn't know what was going on. It was terrible. I had no energy. I was sweating profusely, and all I could do was lie flat in bed, do the mantras, and call the mother and ask for her force and her grace. As we have been told when we fall sick, we've been told very clearly by her what we have to do. So sincerely as possible, I tried to do all that. And literally a week later, I was fine. I did take a course of antibiotics given by the doctor, and everything just worked beautifully. So I have come out of being sick. I haven't got tested yet, so I don't know if I had the corona or not. But I pretty much followed everything I have shared and turned what could have been an event that made me fearful, and instead I used it to do yoga. Another thing I want to quickly add before we go into Q&A is it was interesting for me this year, Mahashivaratri and Mother's birthday came on the same day, 21st February. And I was very struck by that, and that this year is the supramental anniversary year, and there was to be the supramental as well, and an occasion for new energy, next packet of energy to come through and continue the work it's doing here. I don't know if any of you have read on Mother and Sri Aurobindo's communication with the archetype, the being, the person of Shiva. And they describe how to achieve this new creation, Mother had to effectively get the collaboration of all the Devis and Devatas who otherwise rule over their own kingdoms and are very happy with that, but that somehow to create the new creation based on unity consciousness, all these different beings of the overmind had to come together and to collaborate. And she even describes how Durga, the Mother Nature, came and there was a storm all night, and then finally she said, yes, I will collaborate. And then Shiva, when they call him, he comes, but he says, no, the time not ready, or something to that effect. He says, every other Devi Devata or archetypal force of being involved in this creation or has power over this creation, until them come to you and agree for collaboration, I will not come. He says, gather everyone and I will come last. And so I have often thought about Shiva, and when I saw the last, certainly since the year 2012, where there's supposed to be a shift in consciousness according to the Mayan calendar, I could see how there is still so much resistance to the shift in consciousness from the collective unconscious. And I could see the Mother's Shakti being at trying to achieve the change. And very spontaneously, there would be a cry coming out of my heart to Shiva saying, how can you just let her do alone? She needs, for the full force, the full power, Shiva has to descend, just like the supramental descent, for truth consciousness to be here in order for physical matter to be able to hold divine consciousness. In the same way, till the Shiva Tattva, the being of the Shiva, doesn't enter into this creation, Shiva Shakti and its full power cannot be expressed. So we are going to need this full complement of the Adi Shakti, and so Shiva has to descend. And when is he going to come? Why is it taking so long? And when this year the two came together, the Shivaratri, Mahashivaratri, and Mother's birthday came together, there was almost a wish and prayer that said, let this be a sign that Shiva has now descended. And shortly after that, we have seen this tremendous pandemic take over. So one way to understand it in a spiritual way is, for when any new element enters the existing system, it creates a disruption. It creates a disequilibrium. And the system has to go through some kind of a turn, some kind of a manthan, before it can integrate the new element and release the power or the grace of that new element as well. So what if this entire pandemic is some way human bodies going through the struggle, the disruption, the disequilibrium, which is like a disease. But what we're eventually doing is seeking to integrate the Shiva Tattva, which is the divine consciousness, the divine masculine consciousness, when we for divine feminine, the mother, doing all the work of preparing for the descent of this. So if the illnesses we are feeling, the disruption to the body we are feeling, is just a necessary transition that integrates the new principle. So this was a thought I wanted to share with us, saying this would be positive meaning making from this crazy time. And these are things Mother and Sri Aurobindo have talked about, and it's just Shiva who had yet to come in order for the evolution to achieve its new creation. But in his book, The Mother, Sri Aurobindo also describes other aspects of the mother that were needed. In fact, one of them says is essential. Like without her, this divine life in a divine body is not going to happen. And he doesn't give her a name, but I have often wondered if he's describing Lalita. And this goddess Lalita is someone else in all our Shakti sadhanas that I'm a part of, too, has been coming very strongly to me, as has Shiva been coming very strongly to me in the last few months. So let me just read this out. It says, there are other great personalities of the Divine Mother, but they were more difficult to bring down and have not stood out in with so much prominence in the evolution of the earth spirit. There are among them presences indispensable for the supramental realization. First of all, one who is her personality of that mysterious and powerful ecstasy and ananda which flows from a supreme divine love, the ananda that alone can heal the gulf between the highest heights of the supreme spirit and the lowest abysses of matter. The Ananda holds the key of a wonderful divinest life. Even now supports from its secrecies the work of all the powers of the universe. As I was meditating on these lines, I was wondering, is that the goddess Lalita Tripurari? She's called Tripura Sundari, she who is capable of moving between all the three worlds and reigning over the three worlds: matter, energy, spirit, consciousness. So on that note, let us invoke the three powerful mantras and receive them into our being with the aspiration that each of you is called to this meditation based on everything you have heard. I invoke the Gayatri of Sri Aurobindo to call in the supramental light, the supreme light, Parasya Jyoti, that Sampaji so beautifully described to me yesterday. And then I will call the mantra of Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi. I think that is perhaps the mantra of the Satchidananda mother, who's possibly this Lalita Shakti, who can come in and hold the levels of matter and physical, vital, mental. And then we will go into the cells and invite ourselves to chant Namo Bhagavate, so that every chant is a call from every cell invoking the divine into itself, bowing to the divine and asking for it to come and take over. So from a place of found peace in every cell, let us begin. And now, with apologies to Sampaji for my out of these mantras, he, as a Sanskrit scholar, knows how to say them I just learned from him yesterday, but I'll do my best. Take a deep breath, everybody. Keep your feet on the ground. Spine is straight. You can bring your hands in prayer position at the heart and let your hands be a flame of aspiration rising straight up unwaveringly. Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri. Om Tat Savitu Param Rupam Jyotihi Parasya Dhimahi Yanna Satyena Deepayet. Keep chanting it silently in your own japa. Now calling the Divine Mother through this beautiful mantra, the source, the Shakti of the Satchidananda itself, she who can bridge the highest and the lowest abysses of matter. Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. Continue doing your japa with that. And now, visual, your body is made up of trillions of cells, and every cell is a divine unit creation. It has its own aspiration. It wishes to do yoga and achieve union, divine felicity, and express its full potential in alignment with this role in new creation. Om Namo Bhagavate Let every cell pick up the chant and its own japa. And we'll close with asking for divine peace established in every cell of our body. Because when peace is there in every cell, Mother says we cannot be. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. aware that there is only one body, the mother, and we are all cells. We are all her cells in her body. Let us rest in the peace of surrender ourselves completely to her will and her grace. Become vessels of flow, her Shakti. Thank you. And I'm ready now as you come out, holding that consciousness in your cells, holding the divine presence, for it to be here with us. I'm open for questions. You can put. I'm seeing Partha Hari question. It says, I joined the last few minutes. I heard you say that this could be a transformational event for mankind to realize the supernatural, an event that could possibly be orchestrated by them. So my question is, are they not infected, not selected for transition? Or are they already on their path of transformation? That is a very good question, and perhaps the answer is maybe both. Maybe some bodies have been practical yoga in connection with the grace of Mother Shri Aurobindo. Maybe they don't need to go through this viral trigger. There will be some who will get in the trigger, whose Aadhaar is perhaps not ready to respond with Shakti, and they may or may not be able to come out of it. To me, is perhaps once the virus comes, it is to the extent Aadhaar has the grace in it and the capacity to invoke the grace that this virus is transmuted in the body. So to the extent different bodies do not have that capacity to transmute the virus into a positive impulse or trigger, they may be sick, and some may not be able to survive. And they said there may be some who do not need to go through a sickness in order to it, because they have already found that in us. Let me look at the next question. Bush. She says, your cellular healing meditation for cancer patient is inspired. First talked of cellular consciousness and cellular COVID-19, the worldwide problem facing is highly contagious. Vaccination side-by-side efforts to transform of the cells needed. Cells are rigid and to make the cells plastic. First, plastic ourselves. Psychological immunity to be increased. Can chanting mantra and mantra yoga, altering the nucleus of each to nucleus of light as the mother did in cellular yoga? Yes, I think that is what today's live is really an invitation about. How can we, this is the time, if ever, we need to really use powerful mantras and very sincerely do the sadhana and the upasana with the mantra. So I think that's why we set up today's call. Corona crisis, preparing the humanity to take the challenge and preparing the humanity for the cellular yoga. Even if that is not so, I think we can make it so who want to and use the integral yoga and the sunlit and the mother saying let yoga for you and using these given to us by them, that we can turn it into that we can take what was just a virus that could have a terrible decimator for disease, but those of us who have been sadhana, maybe we can actually do something that actually serve the evolution instead of destroy it. Cancer after corona crisis. Classic education, madam. The whole world should know. Thank you. We share the link to the website. It's ship.com. Yes, thank you for sharing. Rama Mani, it's so nice to have you here. We express our gratitude. We're deeply moved. Thank you. Jodh Kulkarni, wish we could have a practical experiential workshop. I'm very happy to teach what I do, if that is of interest. I have actually taught this at the ashram in Delhi. I have taught Nainital. I have taught Oroville. I have taught many times. Do this if you would like. And ways also that you could get this workshop through other teachers. There must be others who are teaching it in their way. So Sheetal, through the three mantras, I'm feeling the mantra from throat chakra in my. What is it, and what else can we do? Thank you, Sheetal. Such a beautiful validation of what this was, because the full, which is the 5th month of the year, and later today we are going to do it with a smaller group that we have. We're going to invoke the archetypal power of the number 5 and to work with the Panchabhuta and the lower 5 chakras, because this is the chakra of the divine Shakti, is of the divine, the and so it's these lower 5 chakras from the root to the throat that need cleaned out, and prepared, so that the full descent of the samrasya and the formative alchemy power of that can happen. It's beautiful that you experience as doing the work on the 5 chakras from the throat down. It is beautiful. Thank you. What else can we do? I think maybe we can close with here and Shakti mantra that you would like. I would then say Ya Devi Sarva Bhute Shakti Rupena Sanstita. Namastasyai, Namastasyai. We'll end with these two, and we will invoke them in our third eye and in the crown. Okay, I have a question. So maybe we will close with Rama is saying something more. Note, is it not interesting? That is called Corona. Yes, crown. As it points to the opening of our crown chakras to ascend form on the. What is your view? Thank you, Alexander. In fact, that's precisely, it's that they say Shakti is in the root chakra, and that's the Kundalini, and Shiva, opened, awakened consciousness, is in the crown. And for us to become truly awakened, this forces have, and traditional yoga would work on activating the Kundalini, trying to get it through. But Mother Sri Aurobindo was quite risky at a time where our bodies have got so much toxicity and unconsciousness that when a power rises from below and comes up through the body and through the chakras, it can danger, it can unhinge us, our nerves can get fried, our body may not be able to power. Far better to the crown or the third or the heart, that is, the psychic being from the sacred heart, the being, the spiritual consciousness, or the for the supramental and beyond. So given that we're talking about the descent of Shiva, the fact that that will happen, so we could end with that. Okay, so let's together and reconnect with our aspiration and become aware of third eye and find guidance and protection. We can chant Ya Devi Sarishu Shakti Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namaha. Into the mind, the neocortex, all the brains. Let it be like a beautiful rose opening up to the lotus in the crown above. It's that Shakti in us, the Divine Mother, union with Supreme Consciousness of the Shiva Tattva above, as she brings the felicity of the Lord, her, all the planes and parts of being with her. And we invoke and Supreme of Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya. Keep down silently. Lotus of the crown bloom in profound love and surrender. Feel, ask for showers of grace, sincerity, humility. Submit to it, feel it drench you fully, and give Om Shanti. May the healing be experienced and grace. On that note, thank you everybody for inviting me. Thank you each and everyone for having us and your souls, for having brought your beings to this call today. Benefit all sentient beings on this beautiful occasion. Thank you.